Thank you, everybody, for coming to our afternoon NookChat. We've done this, like I say, for a few years, and we're having a really good time, and we have a very special guest today,
Yeah.
Shirley Fuller Nielsen, and she's going to be telling about her family history and things that have happened in her life in the Dust Bowl and coming to Whatcom County. So, Shirley, let's hear about it.
Thank you. Since November is Military Month, I'd like us to all stand and say the pledge to our flag.
Okay.
And our Marine Corps is celebrating their 244th birthday today.
Thank you.
And I have a Marine serving in Camp Pendleton. Okay, here's our flag.
Yeah.
You lead. I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And I always say amen.
Amen.
Okay. I'm Shirley Fuller Nielsen, born the 12th of August, 1934, in Great Bend, Kansas, Barton County. And it was 120 degrees that day, Mama said. And Daddy rented a little fan to have on my bassinet. Well, I am one of 3 surviving cousins from our family trek from the Dust Bowl of Kansas to the lush valley of Washington. I was only 34 months old, but I do remember bits and pieces. And I distinctly remember coming up Cyper Road and seeing all these trees. Now you have to remember, Kansas, we didn't have trees. We didn't have trees, just dust. And no mountains. This was a mountain. And I remember coming through those tall green trees, and I looked out the window and I said, Daddy, they reach clear to the sky. And now I have lived on Cyper Road for 45 years. And I kind of think that those 6 trees that are in my front yard were probably there in 37. As I said, it was 120 degrees the day I was born. And Mama and I developed dust pneumonia. And the doctor advised us to go to a different environment. When Mom and Daddy announced that they were moving to Western Washington, her whole family, okay, we'll all go. So they had a big sale. And they packed all their belongings and the food for everyone. In this truck, this big truck. It had washboards on the outside. It had a stovepipe sticking out the side because it had a great big old black stove inside to cook on.
Shirley, what year was that? Shirley?
That's the only picture I could find of the truck. Someplace there is another one.
What year was it?
Okay, we left Kansas on the 10th of June.
37.
And actually the reason we chose this, I guess, was because my grandpa Charlie had a brother, Fred, who lived up on Reese Hill Road, up by the box, up that way. And that's where they lived. So that became our goal. We're going to go to Uncle Fred's. And that house is still there. So we started out with 7 vehicles, 15 people, and 3 dogs. Mama, Daddy, and I were in our old 1923 Whippet car. I don't even know where a Whippet is. The back seat was my bed. And I can still smell that dust, and I can still feel that stiff, scratchy upholstery. Mama's parents, Charlie and Mabel, and their dog Sport, were in the big truck. Grandpa by himself drove the truck, and he had Sport with him, of course. And Grandma rode with her other daughter, Viola, and her son, Alvin. You guys take notes. Mama's sister, Viola, whose nickname was Oli, well, she drove a new 1936 Chevy and pulled a small trailer my parents loaded with furniture. And her son Alvin had just had an appendectomy. And so he had a bed in the back seat. Viola's husband Albert drove a 1928 Chev truck, and his dog Rounder was with him. Another truck full of furniture. This was part of the furniture. In later years, Lloyd Graham restored that truck. Mama's brother Elmer, who was nicknamed Alec, I don't know. Do you know why? Do you know why? I don't know. We don't know. But he drove Grandpa's 1935 red Dodge and hauled more furniture. Oli's daughter, Velma. Some of you might remember Velma Hoy. That's my cousin. And Alec's daughter, Mildred, Midge, we called her Midge. How did we get that? I don't know. But they rode in that vehicle, and they both told me they sang all the way. They sang all the way. John Courtney, a family friend, drove an old truck loaded with Uncle Harvey and Aunt Julia's furniture in it. And another family friend, Art Garrett, drove a car with Uncle Harvey, Aunt Julia, and their dog. So we have 3 dogs. A few months later, Art married cousin Letha Mathis at Sumas, and I have pictures of that, but I couldn't find them. I was a flower girl. This little thing. And two of my cousins, Peggy and Eva Riley, were flower girls too. And my mama made our dresses. What do you think they were made out of?
Flower sacks.
Crepe paper.
Oh.
Not like the crepe paper we have today. It was thick, very sturdy. And Mama sewed those dresses. They were white with pink sashes, I remember. We experienced dirt and gravel roads and flat tires. Each vehicle had a little kit, a flat tire patch kit. And whenever I smell glue, that's what I think of. Val and Midge and Alvin brought their bicycles too. And Midge and Val eventually, because Grandpa told them they had to, taught me how to ride a bicycle. And this is what they did. They put me on this bicycle, and they would run along behind me and hold me up. Well, one time I thought, this is different. And I looked back, and they were up on the hill laughing, and down I went. They got in trouble. Okay, Midge and Val eventually taught me how to ride that bike, though. At night on our trip, we put up tents by the creeks. No Motel 6s. We did stop at a motel one night, Velma and Midge told me. However, the bed bugs were there too, so we left. The big truck was equipped with a big old black cook stove with the stovepipe sticking out. I think I mentioned that. Grandpa had to have his fried potatoes every meal. So we would stop and pick up cow chips or buffalo chips for fuel and cooked our meals on that big old stove. 3 meals a day. I now wonder, how did we wash the dishes? I don't know. I don't know what we did. Maybe we didn't. Oh. We had canned beef, chicken, and sausage with us. Hams and bacon had been preserved. I don't know what they did for eggs. I don't know. I have to find that out. Pork chops and steaks were in crocks. Crockeries, you know. We had lots of potatoes and veggies, and Grandma probably even baked her wonderful bread for us. We did stop once in a while at a small store, but only for necessities. We didn't have money. Whenever we passed through a settlement, excuse me, people thought we were a band of gypsies or the circus was coming. We must have been a sight. Have any of you read Tobacco Road or Grapes of Wrath? Anybody here?
Yes.
That was us. That was us. At last, the 23rd of June, 13 days after 2 weeks of creeping along, we made it to Uncle Fred's. And some of the group camped there. I was told some of them even lived in the old truck, the big truck, for 1 to 2 months before they could get property. I checked with Surrey, and she said it was 1,300 miles. So that's 100 miles a day. 100, that's not very far. From here to Seattle, about. Grandma and Grandpa bought acreage on South Pass Road from the Woolseys, and that's where Clyde and Leslie Anderson live right now. And Uncle Albert's bought adjoining acreage from Sun Home, Jerry Hammer's place now. Uncle Harvey's bought land further west on South Pass Road. Well, my daddy was hired as a milker at Hillview Dairy. Anybody remember Hillview Dairy?
Yep.
You probably do.
Yep.
And we lived in a tiny, tiny house. I remember it was 1 or 2 rooms. I can't. And Mama washed, starched, and ironed. Not electrical iron. She ironed.
Sad irons.
With a flat iron.
Yep.
And those hats, I can remember if she made a mistake and scorched one, it was the end of the world. Well, the milkers had to wear those spotless hats. To this day, I am transported back to Hillview Dairy, east of Sumas, whenever I smell laundry starch. People
They had
don't
a
even
store
use.
by the Bellingham High School. Hillview Dairy.
Hillview Dairy was by
Had a store
Bellingham
there.
High School. Best ice cream ever.
Yeah.
Yes. The cows were milked by hand, no machines. And Hillview Dairy was famous for their wonderful ice cream. It was the best.
Mhm.
I remember how hard they all worked. Just as a little child, I remember that. Clearing the land, blasting huge stumps with dynamite frightened me. Farming with Doc, Grandpa's faithful horse. We didn't have tractors for years. They had a few cows that had to be milked by hand. And I liked to watch Grandma. She'd be milking away. And the kitty cats would be lined up here, and she'd squirt the milk over. They'd have their little mouth open.
Yep.
Yeah. They had chickens, always a huge garden. And we canned everything. Fruit, meat, veggies. We raised and butchered beef, pork, and chickens. And the men hunted for deer and bear. And Wyatt back there, the seventh generation from Grandpa Mathis, just got a deer this year. How old are you, Wyatt?
8.
How old?
8.
You're 8. So you're carrying on the tradition. Nothing went to waste. We had pickled pig's feet and cow's tongue. But it was good. We didn't know any better. It was delicious. Grandpa would take the excess eggs and cream to the markets in Everson or Sumas on Saturday. Notice Grandma never went. She had to gather eggs for the start, and she had to stay home. But he would trade for coffee, tea, sugar, flour, salt and pepper, spices that we might need, coal oil. Who knows what coal oil is?
Kerosene.
Kerosene. Gasoline. We had to get ammo for the guns and feed for the animals. That's about all we could buy. Carter's little liver pills, remember them? Ugh. We didn't even know that we were poor, but we were poor. But we had each other, and we knew we were loved, and that we would be taken care of. Butchering day. Whew. Was all hands on deck. Everybody came to Grandpa's. And Grandpa always said, we use everything but the squeal from the pig. And we did. The hams and bacon were smoked and hung from rafters up in the root cellar. And Grandma would just cut one down when we needed ham or bacon. And if there was mold on it, that didn't matter. Take a rag, get some vinegar, and wash it off. Cook it. Yeah, that's okay. Oh dear. The health department would have had a heyday. But we never got sick. Do you remember those things? Yeah. Grandpa had nicknames for us. I don't remember all of them. My mama was Snooks. I was Shirley Girly Whirly. And I don't know why, but I was just Shirley Curly Whirly. My brother Gerald was Jeffity Ruffity Tuffity. And Olie was Toots. And her husband was Tick. Where he got these names, I don't know. Do you remember any other nicknames? Midge and Velma couldn't remember any more either. Alvin, Val, and Midge attended the Glen Echo School, and I have to correct myself. Alvin eventually didn't go to NookChat, he went to Mount Baker. And then the old NookChat High School, the girls went there. I attended Sumas Grade School, 1940 to 41, and then we moved to West Seattle so my daddy could work at Bowen. This was during World War II. Uncle Alec and Alvin lived with us and worked until they went to war. And as I remembered, it was a draft. And when their number got drawn, then they had to go. So they came to Seattle with us because you had to have ration coupons for gasoline and rubber for your tires. And we didn't have enough for them to go back and forth and back and forth. So they stayed with us. We had 2 little bedrooms, and they took 1 bedroom, and Jerry and I shared the room with Mom and Dad. What a sad time. It was a sad time. We finally moved back here, and I enrolled at the old NookChat grade school, right there, where the Christian Reformed Church is now in NookChat.
That's true.
That was our school. Then I moved back to Sumas, 45 to 48, and then on to NookChat High School. I remember how we could set our clocks by the limestone quarry. You know where the limestone quarry is up
Yep.
there?
Yep.
Every day at noon.
Yep.
Right at noon. Not before, not after. Noon. Boom.
Yep.
You can set your clocks on. I remember Grandma fixing lunch. Probably just a slice of bread and maybe some meat from dinner the night before for Grandpa's lunch, because he was going out on the field with the horse. And she'd wrap a jug, like a vinegar jug, be wrapped up in burlap, and she'd fill that with fresh water out of the well, and Grandpa would take off for the day to work in the field. Oh, and we finally got a telephone. Remember those party phones?
The hand crank ones? The hand crank telephone, yep.
And a big long thing like this you held up here? Yeah. Well, each of us on the party line, South Pass, you could hear everybody's phone ring.
That's right.
I cannot remember what Grandma's was, if it was 2 shorts and a long, or I can't remember that. But you heard everybody on the line, and you could eavesdrop too.
Rubberneckers, they call them.
Everybody's.
Well, that caused a real problem during the war. If Uncle Alec could get to a phone and call Grandma, she could hardly hear him because everybody on the line, they were listening. Yeah. Well, no electricity until Grandma and Grandpa moved to Sumas in the mid-60s. Do you remember what the call letters were for Sumas on the phone? Yukon, Y-U. Everson was Woodlawn, W-O.
Yeah.
Flanders was Linden. Grandpa controlled, and when I say controlled, he controlled the battery-operated radio, just one radio, and we could listen to the news briefly, and Inner Sanctum, and Amos and Andy, and then it was turn it off. You have to conserve that battery. Our mail was Route 1 Sumas, that's all. If you just put Shirley on there, Route 1 Sumas, it'd get to me. And Everson was Route 1 and Route 2. Every year or two, Grandpa would gather up all the cans of paint from the barn, from his garage, from wherever. And he would paint Grandma's kitchen chairs. This is one of the chairs. It came from Kansas with us. And now it's in my sewing room. This is my sewing chair. And it had to be here today. And let me tell you, we had colorful chairs. He might have, this might be black, this might be red, this might be white. Whatever he had paint for, and he painted it. Grandma was always very happy that he did that. Would we do that today? No. We couldn't handle it. We were really uptown when Grandma got a gas motorized washing machine. No push buttons. No push buttons, nothing. Water was carried from the well to the big boiler on the stove. And that stove was hot. Then we had to heat the water and then transfer it over to the wash machine. Then there was 2 big wash tubs of cold water right from the well. That was for rinsing. And the last rinse had bluing in it. Anybody remember that? Yeah. What did we put bluing in? And the clothes were then hung outside on wire clotheslines. And they're propped up by long clothesline poles. Yeah. And the wind just smelled good too. Yeah, that laundry smelled so good. Well, we didn't have indoor plumbing. So the jitty-boo had to be moved every year. Jitty-boo, you know what a jitty-boo is?
Outhouse.
An outhouse, yeah. Some were 1-seaters, some were 2. Why would you want 2? I could never figure that out. I don't know. Bathroom tissue and Kleenex hadn't been invented yet. It was non-existent.
Sears, Roebuck, and Montgomery Ward's catalog.
We used the old Sears and Roebuck catalog
Yep.
and the Montgomery Ward catalog. Yeah. If you needed to use the jitty-boo, you just said, "Oh, I have to go see Mrs. Jones." There was a bucket of lime or ashes because every day you had to clean the ashes out of the stove. So there was a bucket of lime or ashes sitting in the jitty-boo, and you put a shovel down the hole. I didn't have air fresheners then either. Nope. In the kitchen, there was one big metal bucket on the kitchen counter for our drinking water. And there is only one long-handled dipper. And everybody just used the same one. Yeah. Never thought about germs. Just, we were dumb. We went to Bellingham maybe once or twice a year. It took all day. And we take a sandwich or something with us, a little lunch, and we park on Railroad Avenue. What would we go to there? I don't remember. But we'd go back to the car at noon, have our lunch, and finish our whatever. I don't know.
Shirley, were you guys going
Now
to,
look what we do.
were you going to the feed shop on Railroad?
I can't hear.
Were you going to the feed shop on Railroad?
Well, sometimes we went to the hall.
Holes.
Holes.
Yeah.
I think that's where it was. We did once in a while go to the dime store, the 5 and dime. Cress?
Crest one.
Crescent. Yeah.
I think.
Blueberries.
My grandma was amazing. And I still marvel at how hard it must have been for her and the women. It was terrible. I can see her sitting at her little chair, paring apples and potatoes. And she had this little paring knife. She ended up, she'd peel an apple and she'd have this long string of peeling.
Mhm.
Can you do that? I can't do that. And then she'd reach over, put some salt on it, and eat it. Not the potato peelings, but apple. It was just amazing to watch her. And just in a couple seconds, she'd have an apple peel. The women all wore aprons over their dresses. We didn't have jeans.
Yeah.
We kids at school, and even as I grew up, you couldn't wear jeans to school, slacks, no. We had ugly brown socks. Ugly brown socks. All the way up, and you'd have a garter belt. Those were awful. Some girls, they were braver than me. As soon as they got to school, they'd take them off. Well, I didn't dare. My mom would have known how. She knew that. I'd have been in trouble. Okay, on the table in the kitchen was a big round oak. And we had oilcloth. Remember the oilcloths?
Yep.
And in the center of the table was a collection of salt and pepper shakers, sugar bowl, a butter dish, covered butter dish, a vinegar cruet, and a toothpick holder. And a nice white, clean white dish towel through over that. Grandma would throw that over that after the meal. It was all there for the next meal. Then I put it away and back and forth. So she loved drinking buttermilk from a glass with cornbread in it. Oh, I never got into that. She made the best fried chicken too. Remember Grandma's fried chicken? Oh. She even fried and ate the gizzards and the feet. Sunday you could have one chicken. And everybody went to Grandma's. And that was an excursion. You'd go out to the chicken coop with this long pole with a hook on the end. She'd just be walking along and she'd get that chicken by his leg. Didn't know what had hit him. And 2 seconds she had that head chopped up. She just, like that. Here's the head, there's the chicken. And he's just flopping all over the place. Then you carry the guy into the house and you have boiling water and you dunk him up and down, douse him in the water, and you pluck the feathers off.
Yep.
You save the feathers. Yes. Oh. But she made a delicious dinner. And poor thing, she got the gizzards and the feet. Everybody else got a nice piece of chicken. Mm-hmm. Have you ever eaten a chicken foot? You peel the yellow skin off, and you just bread it in flour and you fry it. Yeah. Yeah. And we always had fresh churned butter. And the men wore hobnailed boots. Where's that picture of Grandpa? Nope, not that one. Gotta find Grandpa. Well, where'd he go? Here he is. Right there with his hobnail boots. They come up to here and they lace back and forth, you know. So to save time, whenever the guys would come in the house, they didn't want to unlace all that and lace it back. So beside the back door on the porch were pieces of worn out tires from the cars, about that long. And a piece of wire like this to hold them on. They slip their foot in that, and then they walk with those. Oh. Yeah. Linoleum, we did have linoleum on the bare floors. No foundation, no insulation. And then on the countertops of the cupboards, there was linoleum also. And we grew corn for our popcorn. There was always a big blue metal bowl of popcorn to snack on. I have that bowl. I use it out in the garden. I also have Grandma's treadle sewing machine that I learned to sew on. And I just looked yesterday. The bobbin is about this long and half the size of my little finger. That's how big the bobbin was. I don't know if you could get 20 yards of thread on it. How they survived. And I always remember Grandpa and I don't know where he got his money. He had a little coin purse, about that big, and he would, on Saturdays when he'd go do our trading, he would get me a hair ribbon. He loved to get me hair ribbons. And people made home brew. Where they did it, I don't know. I was never allowed to observe. Mama was very strict. Velma and Midge rode their bikes one day to Silver Lake. And Val remembers saying, anybody with any sense would not be living here. and she got the giggles when she's telling me about this the other day. She was going to hitchhike back to Kansas. And she also told me that she and Midge sometimes rode the cows just like horses. Yeah. And we had what they call the CCC. I think that was Civilian Conservation Corps, something like that. Yep. And Uncle Alec and Alvin worked at that before they went into the service. And as I remember, I think they lived during the week down by Cedar Woolley someplace. That's where the camp was. I haven't been able to find too much info on that. Grandma was good about doing arts and crafts. And we made our own paste. We couldn't even buy paste. Flour and water. That's what we had. During the war, Grandma volunteered at a lookout station further east on South Pass. And sometimes I got to go with her. And I remember climbing up the ladder to that thing, and all around was this little walkway around. There was some kind of communication, because at the end of our shift, we had to make a report of what we had seen, where the airplane, and we had to keep charts. So I got really good at it. Grandpa would take us in his pickup, and he'd always stop at Bluebird Station. Remember Bluebird? Yeah. And that's where Sylvia Holmstrom had her Cloud Mountain pottery business. That's the most recent thing that was there. And I see a typo. And Grandpa would always stop there, and when he got back in the truck, he'd give me a Mr. Goodbar candy bar. So whenever I see Mr. Goodbar, I have to buy one. And I did get quite proficient identifying airplanes. And we watched for forest fires too. Yeah, that was fun. Uncle Alec, not that where he is. Here he is. Uncle Alec played in bands at the local dances on the weekends, plus being in a band, entertaining the troops when he was in Germany. This is Uncle Alec. I'll share more about the violin in a moment. I'll probably cry. We went to like 2 or 3 dances. They had different community things. And there were dances every weekend out here on
Downtown.
Telegraph Road at downtown.
Downtown.
And Jackie,
Yep.
in later years, her family lived there. Well, we went, when I say we, Mama, Daddy, me. I remember going to 2, maybe 3. But that wasn't a good thing for my family because alcohol was there too. And that was a no-no. So we didn't socialize too much. My favorite games were Old Maid, jump rope, hopscotch, hide and seek, puzzles, jigsaw puzzles, and paper dolls. Probably only 2 or 3 of us remember paper dolls and jacks, and yeah, I still have my little bag of jacks and the little tiny rubber ball. And I still have my shoe skates in their big metal case that we'd go to the skating rink in Sumas. Yep, I still have them. We didn't have chewing gum very much. So at night, you stuck your gum on the metal bedpost
Yep.
and you chewed it again tomorrow.
Yep.
Yeah.
I still do that.
During the war, you could hardly get gum, so we chewed paraffin wax.
Mhm.
You know, like anybody make jelly,
Yeah.
you put the paraffin wax on top.
Mhm.
That's what we chewed. We break off a little piece of that, and that is so hard. Oh, it's hard on your jaw. And see, there was even a popular song, I couldn't remember it all, about putting your gum on the bedpost at night.
Flavor on the bedpost overnight.
Speaking of beds, we all have pillow tops or whatever. They were metal frames and springs with a mattress about that thick and a slop jar under each bed. Anybody remember that? That was just another daily chore. Every morning, somebody had to empty those. Lamps had to be filled every day with the kerosene, and the wicks had to be trimmed just so, and the chimneys had to be washed. And every day, they split firewood and kindling and kept the wood box full. My daddy was seriously injured in an accident at the Knight Lumber Mill on Frost Road, right where you live. There was a mill there. So I helped Mama with about 100 laying chickens. Now, I never did like chickens, and here I was responsible to gather the eggs. So I'd have a basket in one hand and a hammer in the other. I just lifted those pesky hens right up with the handle of my hammer. And I wasn't putting my hand under there. I had tangled previously with a banny hen and her babies. And I can vouch, those claws, she landed on the top of my head.
Oh.
And I can still hear myself screaming. I was 3. That was a clipper, I was 3. Well, I've told you a little bit about my childhood. Not much about me as a person. So I'd like to tell you some important things that molded me to become me. My parents and grandparents taught me very well. A work ethic, faith, honesty, family, community, and patriotism. There have been many changes. Correspondence has really changed. Writing to our service people during World War II left much to be desired. If we received a letter from Uncle Alec, Alvin, or Winton, they were written on onion skin paper. Anybody know what onion skin paper looks like? 3 or 4 of us do. Yeah. And they were heavily censored. They didn't just blot it out. They took a scissor and cut the words out. So it looked like a snowflake sometimes. Yeah. And now to think how our communication is so instantaneous. Yes, right now that's going someplace. Never would have dreamt it. We didn't have credit cards, no food stamps, no ATMs. How did we do it? If you were lucky, the local merchant would extend credit on an individual basis, however. And each customer had an account book at the checkout counter. And then Grandpa would take the eggs and the cream down, and they'd give him so much credit for that, mark it on his book. Dear. World War II meant separations, rationing of gasoline, rubber tires, shoes, groceries. No butter unless you made your own. We were blessed that way. They had some yucky white stuff like grease. And you get a little capsule of yucky, oily, orange stuff. You'd break that capsule in and mix it up. Oh, it was gross. That was called oleo. Mm-hmm. Pure plastic. Ooh. Every house had a flag in the front window. It was white, had gold fringe on the bottom, and a blue star, I believe it was, for each family member serving our country. Patriotism was everywhere. We saved scrap metal, even the tinfoil from our gum wrappers. Remember scraping that off? Yeah. And we'd just make a ball of tinfoil, and we'd turn that in for the war effort. Do you think it helped? I don't know. They had us thinking that way. I have a grandson in his 4th year of being a U.S. Marine. And I'm ever so proud of him. I wear a pin for him every day. And I'm very grateful to all the people who serve our country. Do we have any veterans here today? Would you stand? Thank you. Very important. I'm glad you're here.
Thank you.
Music. That helped shape me. Uncle Alec walked downtown or uptown to West Seattle and bought a little violin for me. He couldn't read music, never had had a lesson, but he played several instruments well. Violin, banjo, guitar, mouth harp, Jew's harp. He could play his violin back here, behind his head. It was amazing. Anyway, he drew a music staff on a notebook, piece of notebook paper, old tablet paper. And I had my first piece of music, Mary Had a Little Lamb. And he taught me how to play that on violin. I was in grade 2. And then he went away to war, to Germany. He was in the Battle of the Bulge. Those horrible, horrible days. And they were liberating little towns. All the bridges had been blown up. But marching towards a little town, he saw a haystack alongside, and he spotted the neck of a violin sticking out. And he grabbed it, just reached out, grabbed it. And holding his rifle and the violin, he swam across the Rhine River and handed the violin to a superior officer with instructions to mail it to my grandpa for me. I still have the wooden box someone made to ship it in, and they painted in red paint Charlie Mathis, Sumas Wash. And it got there. I practiced an hour. That became my pride and joy. And I practiced an hour every night. Mr. Matson was the pastor of the Assembly of God Church in Sumas, and he was my instructor. I often played duets with him. Markings inside the violin indicated it was a Stradivarius violin. At the time, I had no idea what Stradivarius meant. But never did I ever think about selling. Several years ago, I took that violin, I don't know if I can do this, to a music shop to get new strings and stuff. I should have done it myself, but I didn't. It took forever for them to fix it, and they never called me and never called me. Finally, I just walked into the store one day by myself, and I remember there's 3 or 4 questionable characters in there hanging around. And the clerk gave me my violin, and I was so naive and uncomfortable, I just paid him and took off. And I remember thinking, it didn't sound good, and it didn't feel good. It was not my violin. I was ill, and I was heartbroken. I just hope the new owner enjoys it, and I'm sure the store owner made a lot of money. Just writing about it was really hard for me. Now it's 1945-46, and I'm in grade 6 at Sumas. We played symphonets in grade 5. Remember symphonets? And now we could play real band instruments. I played the B-flat clarinet, and such fun we had, marching in the parades and concerts. Several years ago, I bought an electric organ and taught myself to play just for myself. Every church I was involved in had a choir, and I joined every one of them, singing first soprano. Education. School has always been important to me, and I excelled. I did. When we had spelling bees, people don't even know what that is, but when we had spelling bees, I was the first one chosen, always. In athletics, I was the last. An athlete I was not, an athlete I am not. I would rather have stayed in the classroom and read a book. So, as the team is playing, the kids are playing baseball, as I recall, I was given a little baggie with lemon drops in it and instructed to take care of this. I think he had diabetes. I didn't know what it was, but they said, you take care of Dale. And so we would walk around the schoolyard, and if he starts to shake, you give him a lemon drop. Is that the right thing? I thought that was important, anyway, but I didn't have to try to catch a ball. So that was good. In grade 5, I missed my very first spelling word. It was the auditorium. And I lost to my best friend, Nancy Lockbaum. In grade 9, I received my first B in algebra. Daddy looked at my card and said, that'll be an A next time, sister. So the next morning, I asked Mr. Pulley if I could have a different seat, and he agreed. He said, I was just waiting for you to ask. And then I always had A's. My favorite classes were Greg's shorthand, which I still use, and typing. I was very proficient in both. I practiced an hour each evening on violin, the clarinet, and shorthand. I received several awards for penmanship. Hobbies, I had reading, poetry, music, sewing, crafts, coloring. I colored before society said it was okay. Ceramics and genealogy. Genealogy. This chart goes back to the year 627. And there I am. Charlemagne the Great, Pepin the Short are in here. A king, an emperor, several kings, princes, whatever. But I just have to remember, I'm a daughter of the king. This is just paper. But it makes interesting reading. in the 1600s, my grandpa John Fuller came from Lavenham, England, and settled in Boston. And I've spent over a week in Boston, in Newton, finding all these wonderful things. So that's been a fun thing. This is my grandpa Richard Cameron in Scotland. His father was jailed because of his Christian convictions. And Richard was arrested and would not submit, would not give up his Christian convictions, and they chopped his hands off and his head. And they took those items to the jail, to his father, and said, "Do you know who this is?" He said, "Yes, that's my son." And they put Grandpa's head on a silver platter, and they carried it to Edinburgh, Scotland, and it ended up on a spike along the roadway for people to see what they would do to you. And then I have King Pepin the Short, and his son, the Emperor Charlemagne. Now, I studied Charlemagne when I was in 6th grade and also in high school. I didn't know this at the time. It's just interesting. Church, always very important to me. Here again, I would get involved in teaching, choir, women's activities, and served in various officer positions. I was baptized by immersion on 10 April 1949 with my mama and my daddy. And that's always been a special memory for me. Angels. Who believes in angels? Can I share an angel experience? In February of 1944, at the old St. Joseph's Hospital, I had an appendectomy with very serious complications. And I remember there was a little boy in the bed next to me, same room. I'll tell you more about that in a moment. I did not understand how serious things were, but there were several doctors, sisters around my bed. Sisters, some were in black habits, some were in white. I was only 9 and had not had any experience with Catholicism, but the sisters were busy talking out loud and playing with their beads. The next thing I knew, I'm up in the corner over there sitting on a little shelf looking down at my bed and all these people around my bed. You think I'm crazy? You believe that? Okay, it happened. After a time, I was back in my bed. Quite a few years later, I realized what had happened, and I have great respect for the sisters. They were praying for me. And God saved me. He wasn't finished with me yet. Now that little boy, his name was Ronnie Seiler.
Oh.
And a year ago, at the old timers picnic right out here,
Yep.
I'm standing in line by this tall guy, and I read his name tag, Ronnie Seiler. I introduced myself to him, And I said, were you in St. Joseph's Hospital in February of 1944? And he looked at me kind of strange, and yeah, I was. So I related the story to him. He didn't remember all that. So this year, just this last July, I took a page from my old, we used to have autograph books. Well, it was here. A piece of paper. Here. Like this little autograph paper. Well, it was from his mother. She had written in my book and mentioned her son, Ronnie. He was elated because there was his mother's writing. So he had to take a picture with his cell phone. Now, you can't make that up. Okay, talking about autograph books. I have to share this with you. My grandparents, who I idolized, wrote in my book. And my grandma says, "What shall I write? What shall it be? Only 2 words. Remember me." 1943. My grandpa, 1947. Shirley is a girl of high renown. She fell in the snow as she went to town. Isn't that just precious? I love it. Okay, another angel. Now it's 20th of November, 1997. I'd spent the night with my mother in Sumas and was on my way to work in Everson that morning. Why I stopped at Yorkie's, I don't remember. But when I got back in the car, a male voice from the back seat said to me, "Take Haverstick Road today." I try to process that and drive towards Garrison Corner. And I had decided I'm just going to follow the highway and I'm going to Everson. I have to get to work. But as I passed Barbour Road and continued, that same voice very forcefully said, "I said take Haverstick Road." Yes, sir. So I turned onto Haverstick and continued west. My son-in-law had been in a terrible auto accident just then, and God sent me there. I've always felt that. Then in October of 1983, I had a heart attack. And after a week in the hospital and some arrhythmia problems necessitated more hospital visits, everything seemed okay. Then a few years ago, I was awakened by what I thought was another attack. All of a sudden, there was this tall man standing beside my bed. And I wasn't a bit frightened. I wasn't upset. He touched my chest with his left hand. I'll never forget it. And I felt his brown slacks. I went like this. And they felt like my daddy's slacks, his church suit. Just like that, he's gone. And I just turned over and went back to sleep. have not had a problem since then. And it's been 36 years since my first attack. Yes, I believe in angels. I could tell you 3 more. I often wear angel earrings or pins, and I have an extensive collection of angel Christmas decorations. This year I'm reading through the Bible using Dr. Jeremiah's study Bible. Quite. I would encourage anybody, everybody, to do it once. This is my first time to just specifically January 1 to December 31, and we'll be through the Bible. It's amazing. Amazing. And I'm also writing my autobiography. I'll never get it finished. Okay, I've already talked to you about genealogy, but one thing, my great uncle, Henry Fuller, rode with Pancho Villa.
Wow.
Did anybody study him?
I know who he is.
Is he a good guy or a bad guy? I don't know. And they got chased out of the United States and they fled into Mexico. Henry then became Enrique. Is that how you say it? Enrique? And he married a beautiful Spanish lady. They lived on the east side of Mexico. I corresponded with them for a while, and some of my cousins from Kansas have spent time with them in Mexico. So you never know what you're going to find in your family tree. Okay. I told you about Grandpa Richard Cameron. Grandpa John Fuller had over 1,000 acres of land along the Charles River in Boston. And my husband and I took an old map and we overlaid a new map over it, and we located Grandpa's farm and went out and had lunch there. It's a beautiful place over there. My favorite authors, I always like to read, and my grade 7 teacher, Leland Dow, I don't know, do you remember him? Really nurtured that. I fell in love with poetry, and still I am a voracious reader. I got John Grisham's latest book, 400 pages, whatever. I read it in 2 sittings. My favorite authors are Dr. David Jeremiah, John Grisham, and Debbie McComber. I never had a teddy bear. And I always wondered, okay, where's my teddy bear picture?
With the violin.
Hmm?
Is
it here?
Did it?
This one's
Is it over
Shirley?
there already? Oh, here it is. I never did have a teddy bear. Now I do. I have a few. Several of them were made by Adriano de Hogue from the Hallmark shop. You can pass that around.
I think it's been.
Has it been around?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, there's that.
Okay.
That's little table and chairs where my brother and I sat at that table. I told you I was born 12 August. That was a great uncle Carl's birthday, and they never were blessed with children. He gave me this little rocking chair when I was born, and I still have that. I like one-line sermons, quotes, and sayings. Well, in March of '43, I was in grade 3 at NookChat. Right there. My room was the lower one on the bottom back there. We lived on North Pass Road in the log house, in this log house. These two pictures are originals done by Wayne Sorensen, local fellow. Well, Donald, my husband Donald, and family had recently moved from Glendale, California, and they lived a few houses away on South Pass, right up there. One day, my bus stopped for this new fellow who was wearing nice shoes, slacks, and a white shirt. And I decided to keep my eyes on him. I was used to the fellows at school. Clunky work shoes, maybe just from the barn, bib overalls, flannel shirts. Yeah, I kept my eyes on this guy. Yes? What? Comments? Well, Donald, it turns out that Donald was in grade 4 over there, that same building. And eventually he winked at me, and the rest is history. I could write a book. We were given 61 years and 17 days. And I cared for him for 7.5 years after a terrific accident that broke his neck and damaged his brain. We married in November 1950, and we continued in school. We continued in school until midterm of his senior year, when he met requirements for graduation, and then we moved back to Glendale, California. He earned $2 an hour. $2. I continued high school via correspondence at the University of Washington and night classes in Glendale at their high school. By April of '53, we had 2 beautiful little girls. My Barbara, my Vicky Jo. And we moved back to Whatcom County. I needed 1/2 of a credit to graduate. The school board made me attend full-time for an entire year to get my diploma. You had to be in attendance 3.5 years. No exceptions. So I made lemonade out of those lemons. It was an extreme hardship on all of us, but we persevered, and I graduated valedictorian. But, there's always a but. I was not recognized because I was a married woman. Talk about changes? Times have changed.
Yep.
This is just another example. When I began that senior year at school, I was called to the home ec teacher's room and lectured about not talking to the other girls about being married. How would that go over today? Things change. Sometimes for the good, sometimes for the bad. In closing, I'd just like to thank each of you for listening. It's been fun putting this together. I am who I am because of these wonderful ancestors I've shared with you. And I thank my God every day for them and what they taught me. May God continue to bless our beautiful valley and our country. Just remember, growing old is mandatory, but growing up is optional. And might I suggest you read a book by Ruth Harriet Jacobs, Be an Outrageous Older Woman. God bless.
What year did Don graduate?
51.
He was a classmate of my sister.
Yes, Patty.
Patty, yes. Yep.
Absolutely. Do
Does
you have any
anyone else have any
questions?
questions?
Any
Yeah.
questions?
You were talking about canning everything.
Yes.
Everything had to be canned then because there was no refrigeration.
We didn't have refrigerators.
No refrigeration at all. Everything had to be canned.
Yeah,
I can remember that. My mother doing
jars
all of
and
that.
jars and jars.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. And all the water had to be carried in. Then it had to be cooked on the stove. And
Yep.
oh my gosh, how they did it.
Yeah, wood cook stove.
We would just throw up our hands, I think, and
Well, I've had wood heat for 84 of my 87 years. I still have wood heat. I got a Linden sheet metal wood furnace. And
well,
I
their
cut my wood.
wood
split
heat
it
is
with them all-
wonderful.
Split it with them all in a wedge.
Yeah, yeah.
Yep.
You're most welcome to look at these things. Just, my brain wouldn't turn off. Words that we don't use now, I thought of, you know, 'cause I wasn't allowed to say gosh, golly, gee, nothing. You couldn't say anything. I could say hokey fried. Where's Lincoln? Hokey fried. Fiddlesticks, phooey, alfalfa, shooteration, hokey Pete, for Pete's sake, heavens to Murgatroyd. Now where that comes from, I don't know. Heavens to Betsy, or fiddle-dee-dee. But here's a list of some of the words that we don't ever say anymore. And then I got to thinking about the businesses in Sumas, NookChat, and Everson. These are some of the, I really would like it if you would glance through here and if you see something that I forgot, if you'll mark it down. Okay, what was I gonna show you? I was gonna show you something.
Remember Anderson?
Oh, I think I forgot to tell you, I was an activist too. Activist for different safety things. The main one was pipeline safety. I was very, very, very active in that. I went to Washington, D.C. and testified before committees there after we had the explosion here and the bad one in Bellingham. I worked several years on that. Other safety issues in my neighborhood, stop signs, that type of thing. Yep. I had 4 folders. What's this one? Oh, that one. You gotta see out, and that's we chop wood.
I think this one's been around. This one's been around. This one's been around.
That one's been around.
Yes.
Has this one been around?
Always.
I
Yes.
never figured
You did. You saw that one. This I just put in because Grandma and Grandpa celebrated their 60th wedding anniversary.
Oh,
this one's right down here. So this is me and my dog. This is the hospital where I was born. And we took pictures there recently. This I don't think was. There's my first cowboy boots.
I've got a pair of
My grandmother's
the
Bible,
little leather ones with buttons.
well used.
I think
They're
one
so
thing you need
cute.
to mention about how many Bibles you have as a family, I thought that was quite intriguing.
Well, last I counted
Roughly.
was in the 30s.
In the
It's-
30s,
Yeah.
the Bibles of the family, I thought it's really amazing.
But this was, it's always interesting to me what people put in their Bible. In the old days, like the relatives in Kansas, when they died, there was always, they do things differently back there. And they would cut a piece of the ribbon from the flowers, and then they would send it to Grandma. And she put that in there. And then she pressed flowers. You know. And here's a bookmark to Mildred Mathis from Mrs. Hoy, December 39. Isn't that something? And throughout here, you'll find a little, oh, here it is, here it is. Somebody's hair,
Funny.
you know, there's some more.
Oh.
I did.
It's not, here's a piece of, it must be a pattern for something, quilting or something. But it's interesting. She
I say my dogs.
studied her Bible, like, because she would write on here, November 25, 1942. She'd write in there with a pencil, not a pen, because we didn't have pens. When you graduated 8th grade, you might get a pen and pencil set. And the girls, that's when we got our first wristwatch, was grade 8. I still have mine. But things change. Now little kids have watches. Little kids have iPhones. You know? It's, oh, I didn't tell you about this. Did I forget that?
Yes. Go ahead.
I skipped it. When we lived up on South Pass, and Aunt Ole and Uncle Albert lived back across the forest, we would leave Grandma's house, and we'd blow on her conch shell, so Aunt Ole knew we were coming. Well, halfway through was a great big old barn that we'd been told there was a bear there. Well, Midge and Velma and I, we would go anyway. We would traipse through there. We'd get to Aunt Ole's house, and then we'd blow on her conch shell so Grandma would know we got there. Yeah. So that was that thing. We don't iron much anymore. And I don't know how anybody ironed anything with, this is a flat iron.
Called a sad iron. I have my mother's sad iron.
And it has a
handle.
wooden handle
Yeah,
that
my
clamps in here, and you
Yep.
Oh, man.
try ironing stuff with that.
No.
Isn't that something?
Cool.
Now, Grandpa wore many hats. He was our cobbler, the family cobbler. This little, that would fit, he would put the kids' shoes on. Then I have some tall ones with adult.
I gave him to Wayne.
He had these little teensy weensy nails, and he put them in his mouth. It was, yeah, and a little hammer, and he'd sit there and fix our shoes. This is Sumath's history. 1891. 1891. And this is 1991. So it's kind of interesting. Okay.
I think that's.
Well, Shirley, thank you so much. We have some refreshments back over here by the counter.
We have a party?
We have a party. If you'd like to come up and take a look at what Shirley's brought us, take the chance. If you have any questions, feel
Oh,
free to
yes.
answer.
Yeah.
We're not rushing you out of here. Hang out,
If you
take
have
a look at
questions.
things, and just chat.
Oh, I never told you about my doll buggy. Ah,
Okay,
2 seconds.
no, go ahead.
Yes.
This doll buggy and the big doll,
Jackie?
Charlene, was
Heavy.
given to me when I was just
probably know
past 3.
Yes.
And she still has her original dress and hat and coat. This is a Cupid doll, and Mother couldn't. This is my mama's.
I've got osteopenia on this wrist.
She marks everything. 1926. And she couldn't stand this naked baby, so she put a strip of velvet around her. Yeah.
Yeah.
And this was her only toy, this little celluloid doll. And she had white, I don't know why they're called handkerchief dolls. Are they made out of I don't know, maybe their dresses are made from handkerchiefs, I don't know. But Mama had 2 of them. So that was interesting. And this was one of my first sewing projects. This-
Wow.
Yeah.
That was
That's it. Isn't that cute?
I like the buggy.
wow.
Darling.
Okay.
I didn't tell you about my maltsters. The Fullers in England were maltsters.
Let's see.
Thus, a beer bottle from the Fuller Brewery, and they're still in business since, what year was it? 1845. And I discovered them and contacted them, and they sent me this deck of cards and a lapel pin. So there's that. And you guys with your shaving, you just do it like this now and you're done. This is what they used to have to do, put this stuff on. And you guys are missing the old barber shops. Oh, they smell so good. They did. Yeah, and the guys all had their little mugs there. This is the Fuller ones. This is just because we must never forget. And this was, I remember this from, I probably was 3. Mama would always have little fresh flowers in the springtime. She'd put little flowers in there for me. Okay. Anything else you need to know? I'd be done.
I can't lift it.
Huh?
I can't lift it.
Can you imagine ironing?